Blog Talk Radio. Welcome to MindShifters Radio with your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael Ryce, and his wife, Jeanie. Michael and Jeanie share with you the wisdom of the ancient Aramaic internal process of forgiveness. They offer tools and support 5 days a week from 2 to 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. They will support you in building a solid foundation within yourself to live in pure love. In Aramaic, Rahma. Michael is the author of Why Is This Happening to Me Again? For more information on Michael and Jeanie, please visit www.whyagain.com. And now your co-host, the Forgiveness Doctor, Dr. Michael and Jeanie Ryce. And the truth that is rooted within me.
Hi, and welcome to the show. This is their first day with the intro music. I thought that turned out pretty well. The call-in number is 646-200-4169. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, dear heart, and thank you to Carol Guy for creating that intro for us. I think it's kind of a cool piece, and thank you to our musician who wrote that song after, she did her third workshop, went home and wrote a song, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And so...
Mary Redante.
Mary Redante. So thank you, Mary. That's awesome piece of music. And it's on our website if you want to download the whole thing. Pretty cool piece. Dr. Tim, good morning. How are you this morning, sir?
Good morning. I'm doing well. Quite well,
good.
Thank you. That's
and is David with us yet? Good morning, David. Excuse me, say again, Tim?
That's a beautiful intro. Congratulations.
It is. Nice. It's pretty cool, isn't it? Yes, Carol created that for us, so very cool. Good morning, David. How are you this morning, sir?
I'm doing very well, Michael. Thank you. And I agree. I love the intro to that. It's very nice. Beautiful song. Beautiful song.
If you want to listen, if anybody wants to listen to the whole song, it is on our website under media downloads.
And, in addition to that, because with that song, she also has a CD that's out that has several songs that reference your work and the whole healing process. Her CD is really wonderful. Talented lady.
Very talented, very unusual and cool voice. So thank you, Mary Redante, for that piece of music.
And you'd actually find that under whyagain.com/share, SHARE.PHP. We have a whole bunch of things out there that people have shared, like they've written poems, they've written songs and different things that have to do with the work, and we've put those out there, as well as words to songs that we sing at Heartland, and there's various things on that page. So it's whyagain.com/share. SHARE.PHP. And it's called Evolve.
Evolve. And if you have a question or a comment, if you'd like to kick off the theme of the show today, that would be awesome. Our call-in number is 646-200-4169. That's 646-200-4169. You can listen to the show on your phone. And if you have a question or comment, just push 1, and that will put you in a queue that Jeanie will then introduce you and bring you on the show. This is day 3 of Memorial Day celebration, something that we're going to carry on as a tradition. What we decided in the Memorial Day show 2 days ago was that the greatest gift we could offer to those who have taken a life or lost a life in war at any time on planet Earth would be to heal in ourselves those things that are at the root of war. And those things are the non-human behaviors of hostility and fear. Our work is the work of forgiveness, nothing to do with letting other people off the hook because we have something painful inside of us. but rather there is an ancient Aramaic technology for how to go inside yourself and remove any and every form of hostility and fear. And so our request is, with this being the third day of celebrating, and this is going to be a daily tradition for us, we're inviting you to look at just one thing, even the smallest thing in your life where you have some form of hostility or fear, and to make a commitment to work on letting go of that today. Pick up the worksheet. If you haven't done any worksheets yet, whyagain.com, W-H-Y, again.com is our website. On the right-hand side, there's a link that says Download Worksheets. And you can click on that link, and the first two links under that, one will give you an explanation. It's called Aramaic Discoveries, Latest Aramaic Discoveries in Forgiveness. And that's about a 25 or 30-page document that explains the forgiveness process. And then the second link is a reality management worksheet. That's the how-to of forgiveness from the Aramaic. And the how-to of forgiveness being how you go inside yourself and remove what never belonged rather than letting other people off the hook because you hold something in you that doesn't belong. So we invite you to look at one thing you'll let go of today. And other than that, Jeanie, do we have any callers on the show, on the line? Okay. Comments in the chat room. Tim or David, anything on your minds to kick the show off?
I think the idea that you were referring to with the Memorial Day, I'm looking at, as you and I talked about it last night, in a way of setting this up to support people in taking a look at one of the topics and to maybe do a worksheet. Just choose to do a worksheet around that each day, and then to let us know either through email or leaving us a voicemail that they've completed or done something on that. And if some folks have some questions about how to even go about doing that, how would they even begin to do such a thing, then we're here to answer those particular questions because everyone's. I know of no one that has not been involved in and had some effect of war going on in their life and what the issues that it is that it brings up around it. So I think just to support people, and it's a great way in order to open up the venue of doing the worksheets and to doing it on a personal level with a higher visual in mind. And it would really be fabulous to this time next year to have millions of people to say that they have done a worksheet around war, what a difference that would make. And, if people have done any research or done any work around forgiveness and the laws of attraction, so to speak, and what they will create, then I think that they'll see a significant shift and change. And we just really would like to support people in making a commitment to do that and take it one day at a time. Yes,
take it one day at a time. And on that topic of war, I have a quote that comes from Mother Teresa, which I think is really very powerful on this topic. And what she says is, if we have no peace, it is because we have forgotten that we belong to each other. And Mother Teresa, surprisingly enough, on that topic, ties right into Albert Einstein, who says, if you think you're separate or separated from the rest of the world, you're living in an optical delusion. Pogo gave us the whole puzzle in one simple cartoon. Pogo says we have met the enemy, and the enemy is us. There's a woman named Sally Compton who says this, and I think it's a very insightful piece. She says it's hard to defeat an enemy who has an outpost in your own head. Of course, I would add to Sally's comment that when the belief is that the enemy is outside of you. So here we are looking at our own realities, the output of our own minds, and bringing correction. And one of the basic principles of this work is that you can establish what human life is just by holding a newborn child. And anything unlike that newborn energy does not belong in the human system. And so when we enter into hostility and fear, what happens is we cause our minds with that hostility and fear to use corrupt data to produce the pictures that it has. And so perception, that is, the world we see, is an internally generated image, a picture, resonated by something that happens in the world. It contains an accurate mix of data that's going on in the external world and inaccurate data that's interjected by the dissociated mind. What do we mean by the dissociated mind? When you deny ownership for what's going on in your mind, and it's very easy to establish this if you've ever done that. Have you ever said to somebody, you made me? You made me angry, you made me sad, you made me afraid. Then you've just created, by that denial, by that language, a dissociated state inside of yourself. And what will happen is, forevermore, while that dissociated state is hidden in your mind, is it will inject inaccurate data into the world that it shows you, into the pictures that it shows you. And that inaccurate data, because by definition, if it's based in hostility or fear, is going to create a distortion. It's going to create a lie. And it's difficult to distinguish which is which is true about the actual world and which is true about ourselves. The simple way to determine that is, if I have some form of hostility or fear happening in my mind right now, then the pictures my mind is showing me are not true. Once you start to suspect that, now, of course, if you think you already got it down pat and you know that Harry's to blame for this and Charlie's to blame for that, Mary's to blame for this, and Hortense is to blame for that, if you think you got that all down, your mind will verify for you forever, but you'll be forever stuck in your pain. Your mind will prove to you that it's all their fault, but the question I love to ask is, if they're the one with the problem, why are you the one with the pain? If they're the one with the problem, why are you the one with the pain? It would only be logical if they were the one with the problem, they'd be the one with the pain. You say, but what they did, and you know, they probably have a problem too. But strictly speaking, their problem is none of your business. Well, you have a problem. We need to stop the habit of trying to take the speck out of our brother's eye, as the one great teacher said, while we have a log in our own. So, St. Augustine says, thou must be emptied of that wherewith thou art full. In other words, the garbage, that thou mayest be filled with that of which thou art empty. If you're filled with hostility and fear, you're going to have to start forgiving. You're going to have to start letting it loose if you want to be filled with the human life. And a human life comes forward as the active presence of love 24/7, 365. And once you recognize that, you have the opportunity to start to remove your very capacity to express, experience any form of hostility or fear. It's a challenging piece of work. It's not for wimps, but it can be done. And so that's what we're here for. Jeanie, any questions or comments? Tim, David?
Are you there, Michael?
I certainly am. Yes, sir.
Well, we had our MindShifters group again last evening, and we watched the second half of your lecture, Healing Through Relationship, the newer version. I don't know. I thought it was done in 2009, but maybe it was done a year or two earlier. But the comments about it were that it really does take even that one lecture, Healing Through Relationships, to a whole new level compared to the earlier version which we've been playing for the first 5 years of our group. And one of the things that really came home for me as I watched it this time through was the diagram of the file folder effect and how I can have lots and lots and lots of different individual file folders in my mind, like a file folder on computers and a file folder on red hats and a file folder on alligators and a file folder on cars. And whenever one of those file folders gets triggered, it opens up or it resonates in my mind and brings forth in my mind all of the content in that folder. And if that folder is open or gets triggered at the time that another folder is opened or triggered, those two file folders get linked. And the example you use in the talk is the file folder on the color purple and the file folder on the item or the word alligator. So now I have a purple alligator because I've resonated the word purple and all of my images and results and experiences about the color purple, and my images and experiences with the word or the image or the animal, the alligator. And now they're linked together. And I've got all these different kinds of file folders in my mind. And along comes a person that I meet for the first time or that I become attracted to, and I open up a new file on Betty. Here's my file folder on Betty. And she's resonating all of these wonderful things. I like her. I think she's pretty. She's acting the right way. And so in the file folder on Betty is all of the good stuff. And I'm associating all the people I've known in the past that do what I like to have them do, that like me. And so I fill this with all these positive images and resonance. And we go along that way beautifully for a while until something happens. Either Betty doesn't do something I think she's supposed to, or she does something I think she's not supposed to do, and that triggers one of my other file folders of a not-so-pleasant kind, whether it's sadness or anger or irritation or hurt. And instantly I link that file folder to my image of my file folder on Betty. And now for as long as I know Betty, if fear got triggered in my file folder on fear, every time I'm with Betty at whatever level, even if I keep it denied and suppressed, my file folder on fear is going to be somewhat activated. And that process that you diagrammed, which I think got borrowed from the codependent to interdependence work, just really hit home for several of us last night. And it led to quite a bit of good discussions and then eventually a worksheet. And so that was a highlight for us yesterday and led to lots of good discussion and a productive worksheet last night.
Awesome. That's great. And actually, the healing through relationships and the codependence to interdependence used to be one workshop. And actually, it all started out with why is this happening to me again? And the whole gamut was covered. The responsibility, communication, codependence, everything was covered originally. And then what happened over the years is that I would break out another workshop, another piece of information, and enlarge on it. So the healing through relationships and codependence were at one time singular. And now, because their information is so different with new discoveries. And so I'm glad those new discoveries in the healing through relationships are working and operational for people and opening that space, because the understanding of that file folder effect is so awesome. And, you know, if we want to live in relationship with others, you know, the primary cause of divorce is when someone hooks too many files that involve stress into their brain's image of their partner. And I don't care whether it's a business relationship, whether it's a neighbor, whether it's a spouse or a child. The point at which one has
Michael, you went dead. I don't know if I'm still on or if I went dead.
You are still on, Tim. He's working on his phone, too. Something happened and he got disconnected. So he's dialing back in.
Okay.
But, yeah. So what he was saying was it expanded out, and that's what keeps happening. I mean, now we're up to at least 15 different workshops that we do whenever we travel, and we have them all on CD and DVD.
And each of the DVDs is about 2 hours.
Right.
And,
so it works perfect.
There was another interesting point about the way the brain works, and that is that this is about the third time I've shown the new version of the Healing Through Relationships DVD. And the first time I showed it, the overwhelming response was, I like the older one better. and it was across the board. There was this bristly response to the new version. And now here we are, I think it's the third time, and the overwhelming response was, I like this one much better. There's much more information in here. It's easier to understand. And so it's just fascinating the way the brain cells get built. And it's also interesting each week as we show these videos how each of us is learning to read our own responses. And those of us who've been in the group for a while have moved into the awareness that if I go blank or I shut down or I don't understand a piece of the lecture, that's exactly what I need to go back and ask questions about and clarify, because it somehow triggered me. The content in the lecture has somehow triggered me this time around, and that means there's something up for me that I need to dismantle or become more aware of so that I can begin to work with in my own energy system.
Yeah, it's amazing how as we build brain cells and everything that we see different things. Like, for instance, on the worksheet in number 3, this is on the 7th step, in number 3 when we ask to set a goal for another person. And then when we get down to the end, number 7 is set a goal toward that other person. And it was just about 3 weeks or a month ago, and I was like, when did you add that change? It's like it's always been there. But I never saw the difference in the goal for the other person and the goal toward the other person, and that's a big difference.
Yeah, there's all kinds of pieces that little one word here or one word there, and last night we got to discuss more about the issue of whether or not going unconscious is better than going into a rage, and process that more from our discussion last week. And it was quite... Did
everybody agree it was the same?
Well, people are starting to get it. I used an example last week, and we brought it up and talked about it more this week, and people are starting to understand that it really is about the context and the person I'm dealing with. If I'm dealing with somebody who has a really difficult time with me being angry or raging, then they might think it's better if I go unconscious and just get quiet and withdraw. But if I'm dealing with somebody who has abandonment issues, they may be much more comfortable if I rage at them because then they feel engaged. It all depends on what gets triggered and stirred up in the other person's energy system as to whether or not they're going to label it good or better or worse. But as far as the process goes in me, it's the same process. Once I get triggered, I'm not seeing things clearly. I'm in some form of hostility or fear or complete unconsciousness, which is a denial and suppression. And so I can't respond from that space of love, and nothing but problems are going to be generated if I keep responding from that space, from anything like hostility or fear. So it was another...
That's the whole crux of it, isn't it? And, if someone... just anyone listening to the show hasn't seen these videos, they are available. They can be purchased through the website, www.whyagain.com. But also to recognize, and before my phone cut out, I was talking about divorce and whether it's divorce in a family system or, parent, child, neighbor, spouse, employer, employee. What happens with this file folder effect, and you alluded to it, but let's, for those who are listening and haven't watched the DVD, I know that everybody in our audience right now has a file and brain cells on purple and on the word alligator. And those files, unless you've heard me use this example or listen to Dr. Tim, probably have never been hooked together before. But when I say don't think about a purple alligator, what happens is there's an actual electrochemical link that happens in your brain between those two files. And if tomorrow I started the show out and said don't think about a purple, what would come to mind would be obviously alligator. If 20 years from now I said to you don't think about a purple, what would fire in brain cells? The word alligator, the file on alligator, would still fire, although it may not come up to the amplitude that you would be conscious of it. And that firing at an unconscious level would impact your feelings, your thoughts, your behaviors, and the way you see the world. In the Aramaic language, they had a word for that. The word was, there was a suffix that was added that was uta, O-O-T-A. This is how deeply they understood the mind. And that when they added that suffix to a particular word, that meant that mindset was controlling perception and behavior from the unconscious level. And when there's something in the way of hostility or fear in a file in our minds, you know, you gave the example of Betty, and as long as I have all kinds of wonderful things hooked up to my brain's image of her, when I'm with her, I feel wonderful. However, if tomorrow she happens to resonate my rage, and I blame her and say, Betty, you enrage me, I just hooked my brain's file on rage up to my brain's image of her. Now, forevermore, rage is going to impact my relationship with Betty, even though I may not be conscious of it. It may be in the Uta brain cells. The primary cause of divorce is that people hook up blame for what they're feeling and what's going on inside themselves to their brain's image of another. Once it gets to the point where the stress is elevated and that stress is associated with a particular person, then anyone who doesn't understand forgiveness only has one solution, and that's to get out of here. I got to get out of town. It's divorce. And, of course, you know, it's become a pretty common thing in our culture. If you go back into the ancient teachings, they said they allowed divorce because of the hardness of their hearts. And, of course, that's pretty hard to decode when you hear it in the Greek language or from the Greek translations. But in the Aramaic, they were saying, because you've crusted over your unconscious, those Uta brain cells, and you refuse to be responsible for them, okay, then there is an allowance for you to separate from that person. Far better solution, as the workshop is entitled, as Tim brought it up, that they'd watched the last 2 weeks, is healing through relationships. It's not about healing your relationships. It's about, through the interaction in relationship, being responsible. If somebody gives me the look or says the word or does the behavior that resonates my grief, rather than, you know, turning to that someone and saying, you really grieve me, I recognize I'm responsible for my grief, then that person is just giving me the opportunity to go, oh, here's some grief I didn't know I had. Instead of hooking it into my brain's image of you, I think I'll do some forgiveness around this grief. By the way, thank you for showing it to me. And now you just hooked your brain's image up to that person. You just hooked them up to something wonderful and healing. That supports relationship becoming deeper, more connected, and more committed. But if you live in a blame world, it's really hard to create relationships where you'll feel the presence of human life continuously, because when you're in the blame game, you're continuously hooking up your brain's image of them to whatever your internal hostility or fear is. And that's why we're saying that to recognize, to really structure into your mind the recognition that everything based in hostility or fear is a lie. Everything based in hostility or fear is corrupt data. When I'm in a relationship and hostility or fear comes up, through my interaction in that relationship, I get to heal my hostility or fear. What an awesome gift. What an awesome gift. So, Jeanie, does that bring any questions up from anyone in the chat room or anyone calling in? Tim, you have some more thoughts on that whole topic?
Well, we did as we were talking about the distinction about getting triggered at any level, that whatever my response is once I become triggered is counterproductive, because I'm not focusing my conscious awareness on my source as the energy of love. And I don't know if I mentioned this yesterday, but I had done more of the work on the mind shifter you gave me last week. And in the middle of it, there was a reference to needing to do a worksheet. And so I ended up doing the worksheet last night in the group process. And it was right in line with the video we had just watched, the relationship issues. This was a worksheet I realized I needed to do as I was doing a mind shifter, which is like a targeted journaling exercise, about one of my earliest memories of conflict. And the mind shifter asked me to write and respond to the statement that it's safe and healing for me, and I love to be in the middle of other people's conflicts. And as I was writing about that, I wrote that I don't really see the point. I know that it just hurts people, and that people carry grudges even when they say that they don't carry a grudge. And because of my work over the years with your material, I realized if I was saying that people carry grudges even when they say they don't, I must still be carrying a grudge from this. So I wrote, so maybe I was hurt and angry at my mom, and I still carry a grudge at her for laughing at me when I fell in the water, and I have not dismantled that set of false realities. And then I wrote in the margin, I should do a worksheet on that. So last night we discussed that. Somebody asked me to read my mind shifter to the group, which I did so they could learn about the mind shifter process. And then I did a worksheet on my mom laughing at me when I fell in the lake. And I started out with the emotions of angry and hurt. And I set the goal for her to respect me and comfort me. And then went through canceling that goal in step 9 and came out feeling calm and sad, and realized I had a worksheet I still needed to do on sadness and embarrassment related to this interaction. And what I realized at the end of the worksheet was that I was angry at myself for being angry at her and for being so embarrassed. So this was an incident that happened when I was roughly 7 years old.
Well, and, this is a perfect place to cycle back to our last couple of weeks' work on codependence. As you identified the goal you held for your mom when you were 7, let's come forward now to the day that you went unconscious. You identified a couple of weeks ago that you went unconscious around this issue. What was the goal that you held for the person involved in that conflict that she did not achieve for you?
Well, the first time you asked that, the response was, can't we all just get along? I want everybody to just get along. Set all of the conflict aside, and that's what led to this. I suppose if I look at it now when you're asking that, I think the goal I probably had for one of the people was some level of respect or trust that I would handle the situation the right way.
And
respect me enough to trust that I would handle it the right way.
And if you compare that to the goal you had for your mother, were you trusting her to handle that situation around the friend that wanted to borrow something?
No, I didn't think that was right. I thought it went against everything she'd ever taught us at that time about being kind and generous. And so I didn't really have trust and respect for her, and I didn't feel like she was meeting my needs for being respected. trusted when that I was hurt, and she was saying, "No, you're fine."
Right. So just, for those who are new to the work especially, and if you haven't listened to the codependent sessions, you can go back. I think it's about 3 weeks ago now we did the first one in the archives. You might want to listen through those. But one of the things that we talk about in that work is what we call relationship substitution. And without getting into full detail, because it's difficult to do without a visual image, what happens is that we have a file in our minds on our power person. And the power person's the one who had more power over our lives at a particular point than we did, and they were not functioning out of love. The thing that causes us to leave relationship with the person we're standing in front of and go back into relationship with our power person is they violate a goal that we held for our power person. And when that happens, in effect, we kick them out of our minds and we go back into relationship with the power person. The relationship between the two individuals that are standing face to face finishes. There's a substitution that takes place, and the power person dynamics come up. All the emotions, all the things tied to the power person now step in and take over. And so it's really key to understand that when you find yourself, especially, the way that I usually invite people to look at, has that ever happened to them, is at that point, the person that you're standing in front of starts to talk to you like they don't even know who you are, like they're talking to someone else. And you say to them, well, who are you talking to? What are you saying? It's like you don't even know who I am anymore. And the reason for that is because I'm no longer, in my mind, in relationship with you. I'm back in relationship with dealing with the dynamics, the unresolved dynamics of my power person. And it's forgiveness that collapses all of that, allows us to rehook with love to this person who stands in front of us and remember what our relationship is really about, and to connect them with the exquisite sense and sensation and experience of healing. And that makes the relationship stronger and tighter rather than hooking them into hostility and fear, which weakens and separates the relationship. Every time that you bring something up in someone that they're in denial about, that they don't want to see the truth of, we call it blockage of truth, whenever that comes forward, that person's stress comes up. And when their stress goes up, the tendency is, when that stress goes up, to want to get rid of the source of the information that's stimulating the internal dynamic. And so that becomes, once again, the blame game. Once you take responsibility, then you get to see that your relationships are a space through which you get to heal everything you've never dealt with. Otherwise, you just get to play out power person dynamics over and over and over again. But the key to that relationship substitution is a point where the person we're in relationship with violates a goal we held for our power person. And that's the place where you can cancel that goal, which is forgiveness, and collapse that dynamic inside yourself and heal. It's an awesome process. Are you breathing, Tim?
I'm breathing. I was just getting
Cool.
in touch with the fact that in that situation when I was 7 and my mom was laughing at me and I was scared and hurt and having a hard time breathing, I was so angry at her. And that was what came up in the next worksheet, was the rage I had towards her. And of course, later in my life, I had several incidents where I got so angry at my brother, it scared me, and I've denied and suppressed that kind of anger and rage. So it's not too surprising that it's taking me this long to go back and work through times like this where I was so angry at my mother that my thoughts were horrible thoughts. I want to kill you, or I hate you, or whatever, because she was laughing at me when I was hurt.
Right.
And that's where most of the emotion came up last night when I was reading through the Mind Shifter for the people in the group, and I actually went to the point of being blank again in step 5 on the long worksheet, where it asks me to think a loving thought for myself. And the only thing I could come up with was, I'm a work in progress. And there was lots of emotion and tears right below the surface with thinking about trying to think a loving thought about myself in the middle of this worksheet about how angry I was at my mother.
Well, and that brings another point forward that's really awesome if you have children, because we've all seen the 4-year-old, the 5-year-old, the 6-year-old that turns to a parent and says, I hate you. And the general response is, oh, what a terrible thing to say. Now, think about the foul folder effect here. Parent does something that brings up hate in the child. The child uses the words, tells the truth about what's going on, and instead of being shown how to heal hatred, instead of being shown how to forgive and remove hatred, what happens, generally speaking, is the child is put upon with all kinds of different hostility and fear. How dare you say such a thing to your mother? I'm going to whip you within an inch of your life, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, rather than creating a space of safety and support where the active presence of love is there, and inviting the child to look at from whence comes this hatred and forgive that hatred. Elsewise, until that file is removed, whenever in mother's presence, there will, on some level, be hatred. And, 20, 30 years later, when there's a big blow-up and a separation between mother and son or mother and daughter or what have you, where did it come from? The child at 6 had hatred come forward. And instead of being shown how to forgive their hatred, there was more intense emotion put upon them to try to suppress that, rather than, and or they were, as the world would call it, the world would discipline them. Come here, kid, let me cuff you in the head. Let me smash you for that. What a terrible thing to say. As though beating up on somebody will ever resolve any kind of an issue. The non-being world, as we've said many times, has a cheap copy of everything real in the spiritual dimension. The non-being's cheap copy of discipline is properly beat up. Well, we'll beat this into them so they do the right things. But that doesn't resolve anything that goes under the surface. It just exacerbates it and means it's going to be more virulent the next time it comes out. Discipline comes from the word disciple. It means properly taught. And when we properly teach the child, rather than all kinds of disapproval and rage over hatred from the child, why? Because we have our own disapproval and rage over our hatred and have never resolved it. To create a space of safety and support for the child, to understand forgiveness, to understand its true nature as love, to forgive hatred. And hatred is forgiven in the space of love. It is not forgiven in the space of hatred. It is not forgiven in the space of punishment or beating up on a child. All that does is add more of the energetic dynamic to it. So the safety of true discipline, and of course, to discipline a child, that is to properly teach a child, you have to be properly taught. And most of our world's teachings are insane. Most of our world's teachings, based in hostility or fear, are simply used to keep people under control, rather than move into a true human life and healing. They're the dynamics that lead to war. And so if anyone's listening, that this is new information or you're getting a comprehension of the dynamics we're speaking of, these would be the areas, if you have any of those, that in order to participate in our Day 3 celebration of Memorial Day, this would be the time to go, oh, I see. I remember some of that rage or that hatred. I think I'll dig out a worksheet. I think I'll forgive this in me. And you've just removed one more vote for war and put in a vote for peace. And when we shift the energetics of that critical mass, we will eradicate war on planet Earth. And we will have truly honored all of those who took a life or gave a life in the act of war. So that's our purpose in being here with you. Jeanie, are there any comments in the chat room? Is this all making sense to everybody who's in the chat, and or any phone calls from anybody? We've got a hand up with a question. Jeanie, go ahead.
Area code 607, you're on.
Hey, Michael, it's Richard again. How you doing?
Hey, I'm good, young man. How are you?
Oh, I had an interesting day today.
You mean life gave you more opportunities to learn forgiveness, Richard? How rare.
Something like that. Although I'm not quite sure how to approach this day because it was an interesting sequence of events. I went to have my car gassed up and realized that somebody had pulled some gas out of my car. And it probably happened the other day. Before I left to Pennsylvania, I noticed the gas smell around my car, and I didn't. This is another car I have, and I just thought that it was a person was parked next to me, and I just thought it was their vehicle leaking gas or something. Well, when I went and got gas this morning, I realized, somebody stole gas out of my car because I had to use more gas than I normally fill it up with. So that sort of triggered off somebody stealing from me. Who is it? That type of information. It brought up the situation where my father, when I was growing up, had witnessed some kids stealing gas and had reported them to the police, and eventually the kids thanked him because, it stopped them from doing a behavior that otherwise could have, whatever. But in this case, I basically wanted to report it to the police and just let them know that, hey, somebody's stealing gas in the area and stuff like that. And then I was involved in another situation on top of it where I was trying to get some stuff moved out of a house that needed to get moved out, and it really wasn't my responsibility to get it out. It was supposed to have been the person that was in there before. And so I had to urge him to move along, get the stuff out, so that this, because these tenants had moved in and there was stuff of his still there. And so I was helping get that done, and there was this irritation, this anxiety within inside me that wanted to just say to this guy, I asked you to have this done before, and here we are doing it today. It should have been done before. And I could feel that irritation going on, anxiety, and when we were moving this stuff, eventually I had to say to myself, just breathe in order to let this go for now, to come back to a state of peace. And so I had.
Have you done any worksheets around these issues?
I haven't had a chance to do it yet today. I just finally, got on the phone here. So this is the first time I've had to sit down and process. And the other thing that happened too was the interesting thing about all around this was I was supposed to meet a client today and they called and canceled. And then I was supposed to meet someone else later this afternoon, and they called and canceled because they had a sick child. So it was sort of like all this energy, this negative energy sort of blew up and even ended up in my appointments as well, So,
well, it sounds like, with what you shared with us yesterday and what's going on today, that life is conspiring very beautifully to show you every bit of frustration and irritation that you have in your mind and give you the opportunity to forgive that. And you might find that it'll pay dividends in your day in terms of how much time you have to take a few minutes out, do a couple of worksheets, and see what underlies that. You might find yourself attracting a whole different group of experiences.
Right. Well, that's what I was planning to do. I just happened to finally get on the call whenever I was having some time to sit down to process what was going on for the day. So.
Right. Well, it sounds like good stuff. Sounds like good worksheet material. That's where I'd head next if I were you.
All right. Thank you.
Cool. Thanks for the call.
You're welcome.
Any comments in the chat room, Jeanie? Tim, any other thoughts?
No, just breathing, listening. I have a breath session scheduled for tomorrow, so I'll do some more worksheets before then and review what I've already done on the MindShifter and do a breath session tomorrow and keep processing.
Awesome. And, one of the ideas of the tool we offer in the Healing Through Relationships workshop, I promise to trust you enough to tell you the truth and be true to you, to treat you lovingly, gently, and with respect. If you take that tool and you work with that in the context of conflict, what happens is you start to build file folder effect that is supportive and healing for what goes on in relationship, rather than the patterns that, generally speaking, for most people have gone on for too long in our society of just tapping into the hostility and fear. Because when we hook hostility and fear into our brain's image of others, then, of course, we appear to be giving the power to others to put us into hostility or fear, which is a power they absolutely do not have. However, if we hook that hostility or fear into our brain's image of them, all they have to do is show up. And when they show up, automatically, because of the file folder effect, don't think about a purple alligator. That person that you've hooked hostility, rage, and fear up to in your mind, when they show up, what's going to start to move in your physiology? Hostility, rage, and fear. And it won't be their fault that that happens, and they will not be the cause of it. The cause of it will be the fact that you have the capacity in you for that hostility, fear, or rage, and that you consciously or unconsciously hooked those energies into your brain's image of them. A lot of times when people want to end relationship, it's like, well, I've had enough. I don't like how I feel when I'm around you, as though somebody else causes our feelings. What that statement, I don't like what I feel around you, really means is, I don't like what I've unconsciously hooked into my brain's image of you, and when I'm around you, because of the file folder effect, all that stuff moves in me. And I think it's your fault and your problem, so I'm out of here. Rather than the alternative to that in a conscious person would be, I'm realizing that I've hooked a lot of hostility and fear up to my brain's image of you, and when you show up, man, up comes that hostility, fear. Let me dig out some worksheets. Let me forgive. Let me remove those things from myself. By the way, neighbor, thank you for showing it to me. And now the very person who appeared to be the enemy becomes the solution, becomes the one who can show you what it is that you need to be free of. And being free of hostility or fear means that no matter what happens in your world, your mind cannot generate the energy of hostility or fear. You will be in and you will live in a life that is about the active presence of love, as we said with the newborn. And people say, well, how could I possibly be in the active presence of love when there are people like that around? Well, as long as I'm blaming them, I have no power whatsoever to change what's happening in my dissociated mind. Remember, once you deny ownership for something and you dissociate from it, you hide it away. What has been hidden cannot be changed. It will inject its content into every reality related to that particular topic, and it will play out over and over and over again. People who never learn to be responsible and forgive get to live the title of my book, Why Is This Happening to Me Again? And if you're not familiar with the book, of course, we'd love it if you'd order a copy. You can do that from the website, from the catalog. But you can also go to the website and you can download the book free in English, German, Russian, Spanish, Farsi. We've got 2 or 3 other languages underway, but you can download it free and start to work with that reality management forgiveness process. And as you do, what you'll find is that you can stand in the space of love while everybody around you is doing crazy stuff. And you will have the intelligence of an actual human mind to deal with those things rather than a non-human mind based in hostility or fear, which reduces intelligence and will ultimately always cause you to do something that you will regret. If you want to bypass regret, you've got to bypass hostility or fear. If you want to be in charge of your life, if you want to live a human life, you've got to remove your capacity for hostility or fear. Nobody can cause it in you except you. Nobody can heal it in you except you. Forgiveness is the how-to to doing that. So again, you can go to the website, www.whyagain.com, and you can tap into the tools there. The link that says download worksheet has 2 links under it that are the Aramaic forgiveness process and the worksheet itself. If you want to catch what we're doing live, you could be flying into, or if you're up in the area of Medford, Oregon, we're going to start there on the 12th of June. We're actually going to be doing a 10-day series of free workshops. We'll start out with Why Is This Happening to Me Again? We'll actually be doing that twice, 2 Sundays consecutively. We'll be doing Why Is This Happening to Me Again at Unity in Medford. So that schedule's on our website. You're certainly welcome to come and do that. We're going to be doing the weekend of the 26th of June. We'll be back in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, actually in Hallandale Beach at a resort called the Regency Health Resort, speaking at a medical alternative medical conference. So we'll be presenting the forgiveness the evening of the 24th at the Regency Resort. That, of course, is on our website. And then we'll be back at Heartland. And on the 18th of June, we'll start a 9-day Why Is This Happening to Me Again workshop. That 9-day workshop will consist of the workshops and done in a process-oriented format. Why is this happening to me again? Healing through relationships. Communication. Did you hear what I think I said? Purpose, personal power, and commitment. Empowered to heal. Hands-on energy field work. Mind shifters and still point breathing. We're also going to put into that particular workshop, because we're not doing a 9-day codependence this summer, we're also going to put some of the codependence work into that 9-day Why Is This Happening to Me Again intensive. So those who come to do that workshop or teachers training, there'll be that bonus of some of the codependence work being included in the 9-day Why Is This Happening to Me Again, the 17-day teacher training. So we'd certainly love it if you came to join us for any and all of that. The schedule is on the website, www.whyagain.com. You can certainly tap into that, and please come and play and or pick up the tools. The whole explanation of the process is on the website. Jeanie does an awesome job, has put together an absolutely awesome website. You can spend weeks and not find every corner. There are videos, there are audios, there's written material, there's just all kinds of support products and material, both free, and of course we do have a catalog of materials that we sell. That's one of the ways we support our work. And if you're finding yourself benefiting from MindShifters Radio, then we invite you to consider going on our website, and there's a link there that says donate and support us. You know, every little bit helps. When we travel, our travel workshops are free, and our commitment is to take this and make it available to every mind, heart, and being on the planet. That's what we're here to support you with. Any questions about these tools tomorrow, please, jot down the phone number, 646-200-4169. Be the first caller in that sets the theme for the workshop. What's your question? What is it that isn't making sense to you about this work? Or what is it that is making sense that you've used and put to work in your life? And as you tap into that and refine your question, we'll be delighted to support you with the best information and the best answers that we have. And as you are willing and able to put in that call, we'll be delighted to hear from you. And our work is about supporting you in creating the best year yet of your eternal life. Remember, this is day 3. I'm going to deal with one thing in my life that removes war from the planet. We're going to honor those who have given or taken a life in war. Thank you for being with us today, and blessings.